Hello internet people and or zombies. Welcome to our review series here at Silent Shed. I'm your host, Danger Zone Durs, and today we're going to be taking a look at Resident Evil 2 Remake. Resident Evil 2, the original version, was a huge success back in the day, having sold over 4 million copies and receiving praise for being one of the greatest horror games of all time. Today, we see how that game from 1998 has evolved in this 2019 remake. I've broken down what I wanted to say into 4 questions I think we all ask ourselves when playing a new game, with the last question covering how well of a remake this is to the original fanbase and how much it changed to be a fresh experience. Considering that the original game had fixed camera positions and an environment that were essentially paintings, this game took a huge step in visual direction by adding fully 3D modeled environments and a third-person over-the-shoulder camera that is more reminiscent of Resident Evil 4 meeting Resident Evil 7, which makes a lot of sense considering it uses the same engine. Combine this new camera angle with astounding photorealism, fantastic lighting, and an environment that's just highly detailed, and it creates one of the most terrifying and visually immersive experiences I've had in a horror game to date. I mean, the intro alone does a fantastic job showcasing this, and starts the game off with a bang. No pun intended, of course. Not to mention, it has a sound design that is just downright terrifying and highly detailed. I mean, seriously, at one point I stopped to listen to the wind make the whole police station creak while zombies screamed in the distance behind the door I had just closed. It's a really nice touch. As much as a survival horror game has to look and sound good, it also has to have a really solid gameplay experience. I found Resident Evil 2 Remake to be the return to a true survival horror I've wanted for a while now. Its close quarters combat and claustrophobic environments pair well with the scarceness of resources and challenging puzzles. It is constantly throwing new enemy types and obstacles in your way that hinder your ability to just move right through and solve the puzzle. It definitely can become frustrating at times as the zombies present a challenge all on their own. They make you think strategically about where and when to shoot as you're trying to use your resources wisely, as well as managing your inventory space all at the same time. Not to mention that you can't actually block a zombie from grappling you, and if you don't have a disposable counter item, a big meaty chunk is sure to get taken right out of you. Which slides into my next point. I wasn't too fond of the small inventory space that you initially start with, which you can expand on later, but it's a slow and long process that involves you solving those puzzles. This means in the beginning, you have to manage space wisely, and you will find yourself backtracking a lot to solve puzzles, or even just pick up something that you really want that you left behind. It takes away a bit from the game, but it serves its purpose as a survival mechanic. The map showing you the objects you left behind, however, ultimately balances this a bit.
I believe you. Just tell us a story.
The stories in Resident Evil haven't always had the best narrative, with the games often going way over the top and being more of a convoluted action shooter than a horror game. However, 7 brought the series back to a more narrative and personal experience, and Resident Evil 2 certainly follows suit. The Resident Evil 2 remake story is still very similar to the classic version, but with some added scenes and reworks that help the game progress better and feel more fresh. I truly enjoyed each of the character stories and was immersed as I made sure to be the best damn RPD officer I could be when playing Leon, and being a total caring badass when playing Claire. The main characters still leave a little bit more to be desired in terms of their personality, definitely being outshone by a bit of some of the supporting characters.
You need help. Why?
But the progression of Leon and Claire's story is still fun and intriguing to say the least. With each of them going off a bit on their own direction, it makes the game replayable. However, I found that the second run played out a little bit too similar to the first run, and most players that want the true ending are going to feel as though the first third of their second run is just the same game with slightly changed item locations and a mild evidence that somebody had been there before. Luckily, they have added weekly challenges and new modes that make it even more worth the buy, as well as planned DLC for the month of February. In terms of a remake, this is a near perfect execution in every way. Having still watched all of the original game, I expected some of the jump scares to happen at certain points, but I was pleasantly surprised to see that not only were there new item locations, entirely new areas and puzzles, but even reworked action sequences, refreshed cutscenes, and reworked jump scares. And while of course this is all necessary in changing the gameplay a bit, Capcom also added something that I appreciated the most, that maybe a not so new player wouldn't go noticing. They added a finer attention to the writing, the details of the story, and visual context. The newly reworked intro sequence in which Leon isn't wearing his uniform yet, dropping you off where the original game started, felt so nostalgic, but it was refreshing because it gave you the same major points that the original intro talked about, but it was so much more natural and cinematic. It felt great to watch. They were even thorough enough to point out, hey, Leon hasn't even shown up for his first day, let's put him in civilian clothes this time. I was taken back a bit by the choice to not include the monologue about Umbrella and the events of Resident Evil 1, but I didn't mind too much because I really enjoyed the new scene. The team over at Capcom nailed the delivery of this rework and is a shining example of how passion comes across to the player. I expect other companies to take a look at this game and see that risk-taking is absolutely necessary to have a strong remake, and that so long as you carefully and passionately make those changes, it will be welcomed. Bottom line, I give Resident Evil Remake an 8.5. It delivers on every front and is an absolutely strong release for early 2019. If you're a horror fan, in my opinion, it's a must-play, and if you aren't but you want to give horror games a chance, this is an absolutely challenging but rewarding place to start. Having only minor issues with its pacing, its learning curve, and its less evolved main characters, I find it still succeeding at delivering a truly well-rounded survival horror experience, and I was blown away by the quality, to say the least. But that's all the time we have for today, so tell us what you think about the game and whether or not you agree with what we have to say. Be sure to subscribe and hit that bell notification to keep up with our reviews as well as our other content series. Be safe, Raccoon City heroes. Be safe.